Welcome to the Share the Road podcast. I am your host, Coach Chazz, or Mr. G to some people. Here on the Share the Road podcast, we are here to learn about the stories that got people to where they are at in their own versions of success. Today, we have an engineer, a serial entrepreneur, and also a longtime friend of mine as well. We are here interviewing none other than Demba Kah. Welcome to the podcast, Demba.
Hey, thank you for having me, sir. I appreciate that.
I'm just gonna get right into the podcast, man. I said a little bit about yourself. I said that you're an engineer. Tell me about like the earliest time in your life when you really understood, like, okay, this is something I want to get into. I want to be an engineer.
Yeah, man. So for myself, growing up, I was always pretty good at math. I was always interested in science, you know, um, but I didn't really know like the career pathways that were around that. So, as I got older, I started getting exposed to different things. And actually, the one thing that kind of solidified it for me was in high school, we went on a college tour to Georgia Tech, and we were hosted by a bunch of black engineers at that campus. Um, so that was the first time in my life seeing real engineers, but let alone people that look like me. So I was like, this is something I could rock with. Um, so that kind of was like the first thing that really like put it into my head that it was something that I could do. But even before that, I always knew that there was a way to use like science and just building things as a way to help people. But it wasn't until I got older that I realized like, okay, there were actual real jobs around that. You know what I mean?
hmm And so, were there any conversations that you had, or were there any people in particular that really pushed you into that industry? Was there anybody at that time when people visited your high school? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, man. So I had a high school teacher, Miss Gant. Shout out to her, Miss Gant, if you end up watching this somehow. Um, she herself was a alumna of Georgia Tech, and she also had worked in the engineering field previously before she went into teaching. So she actually established formally the engineering program at the school that I ultimately ended up graduating from, and she pushed a lot of us, kids that maybe had some type of potential or aptitude for that sort of thing into at least thinking about going into that field. So I would say she was probably the biggest catalyst for that.
What would you say to somebody who's thinking about going into engineering? Like, say they're borderline, or say they have an interest in the field. Where do you feel like people can join into it? Like, is it hard to enter engineering?
I would say it's not hard to enter engineering, but you definitely have to be strategic about it in some ways because there's millions of different ways to get into this field. Some of them really don't require a college degree, as most people might think. Um, the thing about engineering is that, engineering is everywhere. Literally everything is engineering when you really sit down and you think about it, because the definition of engineering that I like to put it as is, engineers, um, we literally make things, as in we build things and we make things better. So every single thing that you could think of that falls under that category is engineering, and that could apply to teaching, it could apply to finance, it could apply to the environment, it could apply to sports, it could apply to public speaking, it could apply to building roadways, it could apply to going to space. Like all of that is there's you're gonna find some form of engineering in that. So that's why even though people might think that it's something that's difficult to crack in, if you kind of just like peel back, the curtain a little bit, you can see that engineering applies to a lot more ways than people might have traditionally thought.
What about people who aren't in the traditional education system? What about people who didn't finish college, or people who were, just barely finished high school. What about those people who are interested in that?
Yeah, so I would say, trades are definitely a good way to start for you to build that foundation. You know, people get into, HVAC. There's overlap with that, with mechanical engineering, with electrical engineering. And the interesting thing about that is that you actually might be even closer to being more of a traditional engineer in the sense of like if you go back, maybe 20, 30, 50 years ago, than somebody who actually did go the traditional pathway to go to college and to study the theories and all of that. Because you go to school, you're studying the theory, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when you're actually in the real world and you're touching and building the real things, you're doing the application of it. So I would say trades, like I said, are a good way to start with that. And you can become an apprentice and they'll actually train you. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And they'll pay for your credentials, they'll pay for your licensing. And at that point, once you get your credentials, you can become a contractor. You can start your own business. And you can make money that way. Um, so, engineering is cool in that sense, and that you don't have to be like this super nerdy person, just, coding and stuff like that. Like, you can literally be somebody who's hands on, who's going into the field, going into the trenches, and just doing the dirty work. Um, because, like I said, engineering is broad and it applies to everything.
Got you. You touched on a lot of different things, and I kind of want to go into. You said something about skills. I want to talk about a skill set. And so,
hmm
what do you think for you, Demba? What skill set do you have that really sets you aside as an engineer, or what do you think that you're good at that makes you fit for this field?
Yeah, so I would say for myself, I'm very much somebody who thinks in systems. So,
Mm.
and that makes me somebody who's very adaptable.
Can you speak about
People
that
look,
more?
yeah, people look at engineering and they think like, oh, I have to like have a background in this specific area. I gotta, I have to be the best student in this area to get. And it's like if I'm not, then I have no chance. But the reality is that if you have the ability to learn and to connect the dots and see how different things are related, that's ultimately the ideal person that people want.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, people like put it like this: if you're a boss and you're hiring somebody, you want to be able to hire somebody who's coachable,
Yeah.
somebody who you don't have to necessarily handhold and baby them in order for them to get the point.
Hmm.
If you can get somebody who is adaptable, who can basically say like, oh, okay, I did this thing 5 years ago and it relates to this thing that we're doing now in this way, that's the type of person that they want because that person can take their past experiences and they can learn how to make that directly apply to what they're doing today.
Hmm.
So to get back to the point and elaborate on your question, thinking in systems is like um, you're basically knowing how to make everything talk to each other.
Mm.
Like you know how to make sure that the all the pieces that are being input into the system, you know, are contributing to the outcome, whether that's the product, the service, the money, the budget, the materials, like all of that. You're basically saying like, how can I take everything that's going into the this process into this machine to get the desired result?
Yeah. No, I like to hear that a lot, and thank you for expanding on that. Because when you say that about the systems and just making sure that whether you're trying to maximize whether it's your budget, using the materials that you have, I hear a lot of that, especially when it comes to say like my athletes or say like when I'm working with my students. It's like everything has a system, and whether it comes to I'm trying to make a runner better, there are certain systems in the body or there are certain systems or routines that you have to have as a good runner to make sure you run the fastest to get you to the best place that you can go. And so I hear a lot of those things of you want to make sure that your systems are on par. I think
Mhm.
that a lot nowadays, like people. don't really pay attention to the system. There's kind of I think people are realizing now it's not the one fix. You know, we can't just have the magic pill. It can't be the magic YouTube video that saves us. But
Mhm.
when you build these systems into your life, you know, these systems to constantly improve, or these systems to just work and make yourself better. That's kind of like the mindset that we have as well. And even
Exactly.
like going to your point of like being coachable and adaptable, that applies to any industry. You know, if you're
Hmm.
not coachable, you're not going to have upper mobility, and especially after a lot of people, they frame life now as post-pandemic. It's just like you have to adapt to what what was going to come forward, because anything can happen in a way.
Exactly. Yeah, man. It's like I guess a good analogy for a system is like it's like baking a pie, you know.
Okay.
It's like whatever you put into the pie as far as the ingredients are ultimately going to influence how it tastes and how it comes out.
Yeah.
If you use the wrong ingredients, you're going to get the wrong result every time.
Yeah.
But if you use the right ingredients, you're going to ensure and maybe not even ensure, but you're going to increase the likelihood that you're going to get a good tasting cake.
Hmm.
But even further, it's not just about using the right ingredients, it's about how you use the ingredients. It's
Yep.
about what tools you have. Do you have the right shaped pan? You know, did you grease the pan properly before you put it into the oven? Do you even have an oven? Did you try to put it in a microwave or something? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, for real.
So it's like that's what a system level thinker would ask. Whereas somebody who's more of a like a one dimensional person might just think, oh, okay, I have to make sure like I get just the right ingredients and in the right proportions. But in reality, thinking on a system level is a lot more than that.
Yeah. No, I definitely it takes a different type of mind, and I can feel you on a different couple different levels. I feel like it's a skill that you for sure want to work on, but it's definitely not something that is natural to everybody. I'll say that. Not natural
It's,
to myself, I'll say at least.
it's definitely not intuitive. It takes a lot of practice, but it is the type of thing that pretty much anybody can get good at, I would say.
Got you. I feel like that's really ensuring, if that's the word. It's definitely ensuring to people to hear that.
Mhm.
I want to take a little bit of a turn to go into, let's say, things that you value. We talked a little bit about the systems. We talked a little bit about the skills that go into the engineering. But what are some things that you value nowadays that you probably didn't value when you were younger, or say even in college?
Yeah, I would say for myself, the biggest thing was attention to detail.
Okay.
Um, because as you get older, you have a better appreciation for it. Because the more detailed that you are, you can basically make sure that you spend a lot less effort than you would if you lack that attention to detail. Because going back to the cake or the pie analogy, it's like if you're not detailed as far as like asking the right questions or understanding what ingredients that you need, then you're inevitably going to make a mistake that's going to make you say, oh, now I got to start over again because I got to make this pie and I got to make sure that it comes out right.
Hmm.
So that's one thing, but also, just integrity, man. Because at the end of the day, we live in a world today that very much values the image of having things put together as opposed to the actual reality of what that looks like. So it's very important to have integrity, whether it comes to, in a professional sense in your 9 to 5, or it comes to, uh, in your business as an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
because ultimately you having integrity is what uh, allows people to trust you. And trust, as we all know, or as we should, is that, you know, once you lose that trust in any relationship, then at that point it's not repairable.
Yeah.
So attention to detail, integrity, I would say are two of the biggest things. But then the last thing I would say is just persistence. Because again, we live in a society where everything is instant gratification. You know what I mean? So if you're not willing to put in the work and to actually see it through, then you're not really going to be able to reap the fruits of your labor in the sense of contrary to somebody who actually was able to do that. You know what I mean? So attention to detail, integrity, and persistence, I would say, is the three biggest things for me.
Gotcha. And I just want to hold in on one of them. So you were talking about the attention to detail. Are there
Hmm.
any projects or businesses in particular that stand out to you when you think about you need this attention to detail? Detail, like, is there a moment when you were, say, building or helping a business grow where you were like, okay, I need more attention to detail?
Yeah, I would say there isn't like one particular moment. It's more of an accumulation
Mm,
because it's a iterative process. You're not gonna get it right the first time around. So um, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to get it right the first time around, but it's like you're inevitably gonna get to a point where you make mistakes and you realize things that you lack. Like that's the whole point. Is like you have to try something so you can see where you stand, know what your measuring stick is, and then go back and improve yourself or improve the process in order to get the desired result. So for me, that came from literally just like the bottom, the just square one. You know what I mean? Because for me, when I was attempting to build up my business, at least my first one, I was in a situation where I had all these great ideas, and I was talking about, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I have several different notebooks filled up to the brim of like different things that I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, what I was missing was the actual application of those things.
mm,
I wasn't really trying things for whatever reason. So I wasn't collecting enough data to say whether or not things were working because I wasn't doing anything. So ultimately, for me, where I ended up starting was okay, let me just talk to people and get an understanding of what people were out there that had done things that what I was attempting to do
mm-hmm,
that were good at what I was trying to do. So that was the first thing, talking to people, reading books, reading blogs, and then the next step from there was actually going out and applying things. So, uh, you know, building websites, practicing, getting that craft done. Then it was like, okay, how do I actually get clients? Okay, what's my elevator speech, my
mm-hmm,
elevator pitch? How am I going to sell myself in front of people if I only have, 30 seconds? Um, what is a way for people to get in contact with me? If I wanted to be in a situation where I can take on multiple people at once, okay, now I need a way to kind of automate this process. How do I build this gateway for people to set up time to speak with me? How do I set up this way for people to actually pay me the right way? But none of that came overnight. You
mm-hmm.
know what I mean? It was a iterative process, and it does take time to get there. You can speed it up by having mentors, and definitely by having a more of a community facing thing, and obviously by having a team. But I would say for me, as a solopreneur at the time, that was my experience.
No, that's definitely a good amount right there. Where it's you're talking about the beginning, what it takes, whether it's like finding people, finding those mentors, finding the customers as well. Um,
Hmm.
can you speak a little bit more about what do you feel like is almost required? Required like for those dudes that are starting from scratch, starting from day one. What should they be focusing on to make sure that they get to their highest trajectory? Is it the sales? Is it their client? Is it the mission? Like, what are some things that they should focus on if they're starting from scratch? They're not starting from a $10,000 loan, all these different things.
Yeah. So it might sound like you know something that is maybe a little bit left field here, but I would say none of that matters. I would
Okay.
say the most important thing that matters is your mindset.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, if you have the right mindset, everything else will come. The sales will come, the team will come, the opportunities will come organically. But if you try to focus off rip on, you know, sales and getting your product out there, you're gonna miss the whole point. Because at the end of the day, you can be trying to spend all this time and effort to build the greatest product in the world or the greatest service in the world that you think everybody's going to want. But in reality, nobody wants that. You get what I'm saying?
that makes
So
sense.
it's like you have to be able to make sure that you have the right mindset to understand how you can adapt to situations as they change. Because as an entrepreneur in those initial stages, you might go through at least 10 iterations of that initial concept that you had before you finally get it right. And then once you get it right, congratulations. That's when the real work begins,
Yeah.
right? So it's like once you get to that point, then you can focus on, okay, how do I sell properly? How do I market properly? How do how do I accept customer complaints? What's my pricing structure look like? Um, what kind of products do I want to have? What ways do I want to sell my products on different platforms? Um, these are all things that come only after you've established that initial baseline of how you want to engage with this system.
Hmm.
So I would say for me, that's probably the biggest thing to focus on, and that's it's the tricky part because that's where a lot of people fail before they even get started.
Yeah.
But it's the type of thing where it's like if you have a good mindset and you know how to be resilient and you know how to adapt to situations as they go along, that's the type of person that's going to be the most successful. It's not going to be the type of person that this rigid person that just they have to get it right the first time and that sort of thing. It's the person that's willing to fail 100 times before they can get it right on the 101st time. You get
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
No, that makes sense. It's definitely I'm hearing a lot of it's we have to be persistent. We have to keep on going with, whether it's our there's a lot of different moving parts with it. And so we have to just keep on persisting with those different parts and we gotta learn. It's kinda like once you get to a certain part of, learning a song or, you know, you're learning a certain technique for say swimming or running, you know,
Hmm.
then you got the real work begins of refining it, making sure that there's no kinks in it, and making sure that there's no wasted movement in a way, kind of like what you're saying earlier.
Yeah.
Um, it's definitely a lot to it's a lot to work with, but I think a lot of these mindsets or skills are things that you need in any industry, like especially when it comes to teaching. There's a lot of attention to detail when it comes down to, bringing up the curriculum and whether it just comes to persisting through the year, you know.
Hmm.
So I can definitely understand what it's like thinking about these long-term projects or these long-term, yeah, just these long-term projects that you want to work on. But I kind of want to go into a little bit of what you're seeing now or what you might feel is happening for the future in terms of big trends, whether it's in tech. We can talk a little bit about AI if you want as well.
Yeah.
What are some things that you feel are going to change how we view engineering or change how we view big tech going into the next couple of years?
Yeah. So I would say we're we're entering into a uncharted territory in a way to where the things that we used to value 10 years ago, 20 years ago aren't really the things that we value right now. And as we probably know, can you still hear me by the way? Okay. All right. And as we all know, it's like we're entering into a situation where people think that, just because we have, AI and things like that, that it's going to take all our jobs. That's
Yeah.
that's been a common thread throughout pretty much every social media outlet, every television show that you can possibly think of. But the reality is that just because AI exists doesn't mean our problems are going to go away. At
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, if you have problems, you're going to eventually need people to implement solutions. And once you have the people to implement those solutions, you're going to need even more people to implement those solutions because
Yeah.
it's like you discover the problem and then you need to find different ways to actually fix those things in different countries and different communities, different environments, and each of those atmospheres is different. So it's not like you can take a piece of AI and just slap it onto everything and just think that everything's going to be okay. No, it's not like that. You get what I'm saying? It's like there's always going to be problems, and as we're entering into this new domain, we're facing even more complex problems. We're facing problems that people actually never thought about that were problems. When
Mm-hmm.
you talk about, when you talk about the environment, when you talk about sustainability, how is that going to affect people 20 years from now, 50 years from now? When you talk about climate change, when you talk about extreme weather and things like that, when you talk about the disparity in, in food, inequality of food, all of these things are problems that have persisted since even before AI existed, but are now going to become things that are like at the forefront of our attention going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And these are things that not a lot of people are really talking about, I would say. But I would say that going forward, there are going to be things that we need to think more and more about. So to kind of bring things full circle, AI, technology and all of these things, even though we're innovating in such a way to where it seems like everything under the sun has been invented, the reality is that just because we have the technology doesn't mean that we're implementing the technology in a way to where all of our problems are solved.
Yeah,
So
like you're gonna need experts who know how to use those technologies to best implement them in ways, and people who actually have experience in these industries that know, okay, what are some trends that happened, whether it's 50 years ago or 100 years ago, so that we're not trying to solve a problem that, or we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, type of thing.
exactly.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I'm hearing a lot of that, especially in whether it's people. I think the big conversation, especially when AI first came around, was that it's going to take people's jobs. And now more what I'm hearing is that people. I think we put too much attention into it. We put too much faith into it that it might be able to solve all of our problems. When in
Mhm.
reality, we still are. To quote, the master of our fate, the captains of our soul. It's like we still have to be the ones that end up taking the ship where it needs to go. And so I definitely hear that in terms of saying, for example, in my industry with working with the students, the students
Mhm.
can use AI as much as they want. Please don't. They might, but it's just like they might use AI, but it's also like they have to be able to use the skills, out in the real world. For example, when I tell students, like, you, a big thing right now is finding evidence and utilizing the best evidence to prove the point. We need this in our daily lives, whether it comes to just proving ourselves, when it comes to proving why we want a job, or why we need this job, or why we're the best person for this job, or even
Mhm.
just proving the point as to why we voted for somebody, or why we go to a certain type of gym. We got to take the evidence, be like, okay, if this gym has 4 squat racks and this gym got one dingy squat rack, I'll probably go to the one that has 4 squat racks. So
Mhm.
taking the evidence and best applying it to wherever we need to use it.
Yeah, not only that, but just also like, being able to come to your own conclusions about
Mhm.
things. Because
Yeah.
we're in a situation where people think that, ChatGPT is just a magic ball and it's just going to give you all the answers that you need. The reality is that ChatGPT, as an example, is just an aggregate of human thought. Every blog
Mhm.
post, every YouTube post, Facebook post, Reddit post, every news article, every single piece of content that's put out there into the world, ChatGPT is an aggregate of all that.
Yeah.
So as we know, humans are flawed. So if you take, you know, us as flawed humans, you aggregate all of that and you put it into a piece of technology, then all of a sudden you have a piece of technology that works great. It looks pretty good, but it's still ultimately flawed and it's not going to give you the right answer 100% of the time.
Hmm.
So you have to be able to come to your own conclusions and to supplement that with uh, maybe getting a second opinion from things like ChatGPT.
Yeah, man, we're all flawed. Humans are flawed. This world is flawed, and so anything that we make inevitably, like you said, will be flawed, man.
Hmm.
Um, there's a couple. I want to touch on a couple different points, but I want to bring it a little bit to like our personal lives as well. I know you say you didn't want to bring anything personal, and we won't. But
Yeah.
I got a couple anime characters behind me right now. I was just
Yeah.
interested, bro. Are there any animes or any anime characters that stick out to you? You know, whether it's a lesson that they taught you in your life, or like a really cool moment that you was like, man, this is the best anime ever. But what are some like lessons that you learned from that type of media?
Yeah, I would say, you know, anime is definitely an interesting thing because I think when you look at a lot of these different animes, there's always like a lesson in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to say that all anime is the same. That's certainly not the case. But when you talk about a lot of these kind of like shonen, animes
Easily, yeah.
and things like that, they kind of have this common thread of like persistence, resilience, the power of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
It sound is overplayed at this point, but
Yeah.
it's something that's really, I would say, really important in this day and age. When you look at something like One Piece, which I find pretty fascinating, um, One Piece actually touches a lot about human rights. Talks a
Mm-hmm.
lot about treating people that are different from you. Talks a lot about standing up for the oppressed and people that can't really do for themselves, and that disparity between the haves and the have-nots. You know what I mean? So anime, I think the reason why people like it, other than the fact that as humans we feed off of conflict, right?
Yeah.
It's other than that piece, anime really is a it's a microcosm of the human experience.
Mm.
So I would say that's really kind of my take on it, and why I feel like I enjoy it, and I feel like a lot of other people do.
Nah, I definitely agree with you, bro. There's so many different stories out there that whether it might not apply directly to our lives one to one, but whether it's the themes of say like friendship or say like a lot of like heartbreak and sorrow, that
Mhm.
especially you see that in like a lot of One Piece backstories. It just connects to us, and it's funny that you say we love we love conflict so much. Um, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And so they figured out a good balance of like conflict, lesson, you know, friendship is essential, all these different things, you know. But
Mhm.
yeah, man. I only got like a couple more questions. But if there is anything, is there any project or anything in the future that you look forward to engineering, or let's say either like a person or a project that you really look forward to engineering or somebody you look forward to engineering with?
Mm. Yeah, I would say for myself, you know, I've talked about this for a long time since I was a kid, basically, but my goal in life has always been to form a business, specifically an engineering firm that could do things to help people. That was my high level goal when I was like, 10 years old, back in the fifth grade. Wrote a whole essay about it, and I was like, look, this is basically what I want to do in life when I get to that point. As soon as I found out what the word entrepreneur meant, I'm like, oh, this no brainer. This is what I want to do. So I would say that's something that I look forward to doing. I look forward to going back to Africa and implementing some things there to help the people out there in my home countries of Senegal and Gambia. There's a lot of great people out there that, they don't always have the opportunity or the means to maintain their livelihood in a way that's equivalent to how we maintain our livelihood here in America. And not even to say that America is the greatest country in the world, because as we know, and as the last few months and years have shown us, it's clearly not.
Hmm.
But in America, the baseline level of living in terms of being able to have running water, consistent electricity, AC, being able to go down the street to the grocery store and get, um, uh, produce and things like that.
Yeah.
Those are things that, at the end of the day, we really take for granted. And it's things that have been a mainstay in our communities for a really long time. So I would say those are components that, if you look at a lot of places in Africa, don't really have that, at
Yeah.
least in our countries, and definitely not across the board, in every single community. You talk about transportation, whether it's just simple paved roads, or public transit. You don't have that in a lot of places. You talk about remote areas and the resources that they have there. A lot of places don't have that. They don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have electricity. They don't have that ability to contact the world at large. So these are things that I think about quite often, and these are things that I would like to think that I have the ability to help change for the better going forward.
No, you definitely sound passionate about it, bro. It's something that when I think to just my family, even too, like we're not direct from Africa, but we come from Trinidad, and we don't have a lot of these infrastructures. Whether it comes to, like you said, paved roads, not every place has Wi-Fi. A lot of people in America definitely do take for granted whether it's having a McDonald's, even just like McDonald's. Like we don't even eat McDonald's like that, but having that close by or having a corner store close by. You know, um, these aren't necessarily the infrastructures that happen or are in other places. And so
Mhm.
I even like the point that you said earlier that you were saying, it's not that necessarily America is the best, but if they're, and this is kind of my own spin on it, it's though America's not the best, it's kind of like how can we just make people's lives better, just in general every day. And so I see you doing that as well, bro, and I definitely wish the best for you in that journey. Is there anything else that you possibly want to share, or anything you want people to look out for in the future when it comes down to your next couple moves or businesses that you're bringing up around the world?
Yeah, I would say I do have my own business, Provisionary Consulting Solutions, that I started 5 years ago during COVID, actually. Um, you know, Over the past few years, I've really been able to hone my craft and really do deep dives into studying different business models, different ways of operating businesses, different ways of serving customers. And they say you have to get until like your fifth year in business for you to actually, turn a profit and to really become get to that point where you can actually scale up. So that's what I would say are going to be my high level goals for the next few years going forward. Scaling up, having more visibility for the offerings, that we want to bring to the table and different ways that we can help serve people. Because when I first started out, my goal really was to have this way of being able to serve people, being able to help people that weren't necessarily tech savvy, that didn't really know how to use technology to make their lives easier in the business world. But I think now that's evolved a little bit more until, you know, how can I actually not just help individual people, but how can I actually make a tangible impact, a tangible, measurable impact? And that's where I think data comes in. That's why they have the phrase of saying, data is the new oil, or data is the new gold. Um, it's true because data is the way for you to measure. where you're at. It's a way for you to measure what your impact is relative to what you put in. Um, so to bring things back full circle, um, that really is my goal: is to use this current venture as a way to help people on a scale that I haven't done previously.
There's a lot to collect. There's a lot of moments that are golden in in this interview. You last talked about data. I think that we should all be collecting data, whether it's about our own lives, about ourselves, about our industry. Um, but wow, Demba, engineer, serial entrepreneur, my longtime friend. I really do appreciate you coming on this podcast. Where can people find you?
Man, so you can find me on IG. Uh, I don't have my page up just yet, but it's gonna be Digital Dems at Digital Dems. You can find me on there. YouTube, same thing. TikTok, all of that. Um, I don't want to give out my LinkedIn just because I don't really be on there like that. But you know, I would say you can find me on those platforms, and then also you can contact me at CEO at provisionaryllc.com, or if you type into your browser www.provisionaryllc.com, you can find me on there as well.
Awesome. You heard him. Thanks for coming to the podcast. This once again is the Share the Road podcast. My name is Coach Chazz or Mr. G, depending on where you're finding this at. Um, Stay positive. Stay blessed. Peace. See you next time, y'all.
Peace.